Call to order this special meeting, workshop, I guess is what we're going to call this. The board objective for accelerating street repairs and rebuilds. Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Christina's going to present, and I'm going to do a couple of slides beforehand. The reason for this workshop is obviously the objective of the 2021 and 2022 board goals, which was to find a way to accelerate street projects and rebuilds by leveraging existing street funds and grants with other opportunities. So on the next slide, yes, and you should have a copy of this. We asked staff to look at 10 to 15 years down the road and to try to come up with a listing of what the major street rebuild projects would be. We're talking major projects, not overlays, not some minor projects, but what do we see in the next 10 to 12, 15 years as being major projects? So obviously Kenwood, we've talked about that, from Highway 16 to Bruce Rutherford Road. Country Club from Brashears Road to city limits. Tahlequah, Hyco to Country Club, Main Street Bridge. Kenwood Street, Mount Olive to Lincoln. East Main Street, Maxwell to Lincoln. Sager Creek, Highway 16, Quarter Road, Dawn Hill, Oak Crest, Highway 59, and Brashears. I asked staff to look at what's the width, what would we be doing. So you see under the description, like for Kenwood, a 10-foot side path, no curb and gutter. Country Club, curb and gutter, 5-foot sidewalk. You see the traffic numbers there. But more importantly, estimate what that cost would be for a contractor price, third-party contractor price. And so I want to be very clear that the concept of these and the priority of these and what's on the list or what's not on the list could be debated. But it was just to say, if we were going to try to do as many street projects as we know today that are probably needed, what would they be and where would they fall out in a priority list, and what would the total price be? So you see, you know, $27.6 million in today's numbers for a total price. And if you look at the next slide, slide number 3, there's a map that basically shows where those projects are, so you fully understand geographically the spread of those projects. And also we included the wards so you would know exactly which ward each one is in. And you can see they're fairly dispersed amongst the wards. But that was we had to have a starting place. So that was the starting place for this. And from there, I'm going to turn it over to Christina. She's the financial expert. I was going to say wizard, but that wouldn't have sounded right. But the financial expert when it comes to going over the budgets and what options we have as a city to try to accelerate street projects. Christina.
The current budget is shown here to provide context on our starting point within the budget. As you can see, there's a deficit in the budget filled by transfers and pulling money from fund balance, and this is something that we normally do in most years. That means that annually there's only about $1.3 million available for projects. And staff started with the budgeted sales tax for 2021 and assumed an average annual increase in sales tax of 3% for the projections in this presentation. There are two main issues excuse me, related to the acceleration of street projects. The first is how do we fund it, and then are we going to do any financing for it? So funding options include implementing a stormwater fee. So due to the amount of drainage work done by the street department for flooding that affects city streets, staff is suggesting that the board consider creating a stormwater utility funded by adding $1 per utility bill within city limits per month, and that money would be dedicated for drainage issues. There's also the sales tax split, so we can amend the current split of the 1-cent sales tax with a slightly different split, or we could potentially allow the tax to revert to its original 80-20 split. Financing will be dependent in part on what we do with the tax, But funding, financing would include completing projects on a pay-as-you-go basis, which is whatever money is available in the current year, or it would be bonding for 20 or 30 years, or borrowing money from utilities. One piece of the funding staff is asking the board to consider is the implementation of a stormwater fee. This is an example of some of the drainage issues that we have. Brentwood Street runoff drains down a concrete channel between two houses into an open drainage ditch. And the picture on the right shows what happens in the cul-de-sac when the drainage ditch is full of stormwater and the cul-de-sac is not able to drain. Some of the city's problem areas include Lavona Lane, Willow Court, Dogwood, the drainage channel south of 412, University in Dogwood, Villa View Culvert, South Point, and the list goes on from there. So these are the types of projects that would be addressed with the stormwater fee. They're currently funded out of street money. During the last 6 years, the city has spent approximately $90,000 per year in stormwater improvements, and that amount increases to $150,000 per year if you include grant money. So staff will bring back to you a detailed proposal on implementing that fee at a future date, but a $1 a month utility charge would generate almost $100,000 in additional funding for street projects each year. In 2023, our current sales tax split will end. A determination will need to be made on how the city moves forward with the 1-cent sales tax. And the simplest way to discuss the impact of the sales tax split on the streets is to look at the effect on a single financing option. And to exemplify this, we're looking at funding projects on a pay-as-you-go basis without any borrowing. So with no change in the current tax funding split, it'll take the city at least 15 years to complete the 13 projects that we have listed. Reallocating 10% of public safety funds back to streets will provide funding to complete the projects in 12 years, and it will reduce public safety funds by about $250,000 in both police and fire annually. And however, it would still provide each public safety fund over $600,000 for equipment annually, and that amount will continue to grow as sales tax grows. Finally, if we revert to the original split of 80-20, this will speed the project completion only by another 3 years, and it will also create a budget deficit in the general fund of $1.7 million annually that would need to be filled for public safety. Under financing options, the only acceleration that can be achieved from the pay-as-you-go financing option is by changing the split in the sales tax. In each case, funds will be limited to $350,000 for all other street needs for the entire construction period. We looked at 30-year and 20-year bonds. The 30-year bonds cost the city more. Not only is the interest rate higher, but over time it'll cost the city an additional $6 million with no added benefit. The other thing to note is that the maximum amount for the remaining street projects for the duration of the bonds will change depending on the sales tax split. Increasing the amount of tax going to streets will provide more money beginning as soon as 2024. According to Dennis Kindy, our street superintendent, the city could only oversee up to 3 projects in a year, and this would allow all the projects to be completed in 5 years if we bond. The $7.05 million in additional cost assumes we go with the 20-year bond, and the 30-year bonding would be even more. As noted on the previous slide, funds for overlays, fog seals, and other projects would be restricted to $300,000 per year. And the street now reserves at year end are currently expected to be about $3.2 million. and approximately half of that would also have to be used as funding towards projects. However, if we borrow from utilities, we'll be able to save the $7.05 million in interest as compared to bonding for 20 years. The total cost will equal the estimated cost from the second slide, and streets will be able to continue projects uninterrupted beginning in year 8. The only catch is when we can borrow and how much would be limited by our existing finance policy. That policy requires a minimum of 90 days cash for operations, and the result is that the street fund will only be able to borrow up to $13 million at any time, and you won't be able to borrow all of that in the first year. And since we'll be contracting projects as money becomes available, instead of a 5-year timeline as we would have with bonds, that would shift out to 7 years. Streets will have limited funding for that 7 years of $300,000, but the last year of the construction period, it would have significantly more. And here again, the tax funding split is going to impact the construction period and the repayment period. And the estimates shown are based on returning the additional 10% of sales back to streets. The sales tax, back to streets. So if there's no change in the current split, that will lengthen both the construction time and the repayment time, and it will cause delays in construction by 2 or more years during repayment. And what I mean is, if we shift the 10%, we will be able to fund a large street project in year 8 as soon as we're done with the 7 years of these construction projects. But if we do this, if we don't change the split, what will happen is we'll have to accumulate funds for 2 years, and then we can do a project. Then we'll have to accumulate funds for a couple more years, and then be able to do a project as we're doing the repayment. Oops. That is not what I was trying to do. Let's see if I can figure out how to fix that. Okay. So although staff has narrowed the field quite a bit to the following recommendations, we would like the board's input on how you would like us to proceed to support drainage needs and allow the street funding to be used for street projects. We would ask that you consider implementing a stormwater fee. A change in sales tax split would be required to provide streets the funding it needs as soon as possible. A complete reversion of the tax, however, would only move the funding issues from streets to public safety. But a small change in the split would improve the street funding while allowing public safety to maintain 75% of its current funding and to allow for alternative financing options. Again, what we're recommending will save the city over $7 million by borrowing from utilities. And more importantly, the city will have funds to continuously provide street improvements. We also will have the flexibility for change. So if priorities change, we will be able to make a change in what streets we're going to address. And it will allow the city to take advantage of grants as they come available. If we bond everything, it's kind of done. Citizens will see a continuity of construction during repayment, whereas bonding will require almost a 10-year pause in major projects. And with that, I'm curious as to what your questions and comments might be.
Madam Mayor. Yes, Lisa.
Might have stated this, but I apologize if you did and I didn't hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But on that $1 a month, will that be dedicated to drainage only and cannot
Yes.
be used for anything else?
That is, well, first of all, staff will bring that whole proposal back at another time. We're not asking for approval for
Right.
that. But yes, that's the plan. The plan is to have it dedicated for drainage projects only.
Okay. And then for clarification, the tax split, is it just equipment and not personnel for police
Correct.
and fire?
That is how it is currently split.
That is the split today.
Mhm.
Yes, it's just equipment, and that would be if the board chooses to ask the public to vote on that and extend it.
Mhm.
That's the questions that you would have to decide what you wanted to ask the public to do, either to extend it for 10 years to make it permanent, whether it's used for police in general or continue to be just used for equipment.
Because the struggle is, we're not meeting public expectation.
Correct.
And I know it's difficult, and I know this is not gonna be popular because it gets shot down with no stars every time I bring it up on a board, so I'll bring it up again, because I love rejection. I breathe it. We have another Kenwood project. Another Kenwood project. I have no idea how T.H. Rogers stays I don't know how these guys even stay in business, to be honest with you. It's a beautiful sunshiny day. And the average contractor is going to work and the project's sitting there. Because we're addressing a water line. We got something else going on because we don't have a true street department. I mean, that's the bottom line. We're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We all know these things. We spend a ton of money on equipment, and the difference is in the private sector is that they have to calculate the hours of use on that equipment. And we have the luxury as a city, we've used tax dollars to pay equipment. But anytime I see them, and I live by the city compound, so I'm quite aware of the traffic, but when they roll out, those man hours start clicking, and so the man hours are there, we have that calculated, but we're not putting in the wear and tear depreciation on that equipment. I don't think we're using that in our calculation.
We are not on this particular project because of the issues that you just stated. We are going with contractor price. This is the cost and our approach to contracting out all of these projects.
Yeah, but when we look at we're saving money by doing it in-house, we don't use that calculation. And I beat that argument upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come in a rainy spell, and it's Monday through Thursday, and our crews are going home on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And the dry spell is Friday through Monday, and it's a holiday, and the private guy's going to work because they chase that money. So since retiring, I've worked for the private sector. When the factory closes down, you're there Friday night, and you work till Monday morning till it opens up, and those are 18 or 20-hour days. You're a private contractor, and you're general manager of a project, and you're running crews through, and that's what the hard-working taxpayer sees. That's all he knows.
Mm-hmm.
And then we all hear about it. And so the funding mechanism is all great. The real question is I just don't think we're being efficient. And it's not. I think we do a great job with overlays. I think we do a great job with curb and guttering. I think we do a great job with sidewalks. I think we do a great job with drainage. I don't think we do a great job with big projects when we're talking about base buildup like we've got on that little strip of Kenwood.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nothing against the city crew guys. They do it. They get a lunch break. We're regulated to death as a city, and it makes it tough. If we remember Memorial Park, we were all impressed when that was finished. Those crews were working till it was dark to meet our expectations.
And that's why we're using contractor price when we're looking at the funding of this, because we plan to contract it out. We're not planning to do these in-house.
So at the end of the day, and I'll bring up that ugly head again,
Mm-hmm.
It was a good concept to have our own street department. We think it's a political nightmare to downsize that, but sometimes you have to downsize government, and sometimes you have to downsize and restructure a department. And I think we're there. And I think the value of that equipment, still right now with today's prices and the scarcity of equipment out there, just like a vehicle, it's just, sometimes you just got to step back and reevaluate. And it's nothing on Dennis. He's doing what he's asked to do like a good city employee. Been there, done that. Sometimes we just have to think outside the box and just reevaluate. It feels like we're chasing a tail. It's just going in circles. And we're here again at the table, kicking numbers around, And so I'm just, that's my feedback from the flack I'm hearing out there. And here's where we discuss it.
Director Burns, I appreciate those comments, and you may be right, and we're more than happy to take a look at it. I think you're bringing up an issue that is needs to be looked at. The issue that staff brought forward is regardless of who does the project, whether it be city staff or a private contractor, how do we accelerate those projects? How do we find a way to do more projects in a shorter period of time rather than doing what we're doing today, whether it's city staff or whether it's a private contractor, and paying as we go, doing one project a year, basically. I mean, we're doing more than one project. Obviously, Kenwood, I was asked today about weather delays on Kenwood, and I know there's been maybe some negative post out there on the social media sites. We had a 60-day delay because of getting the gas line moved. We also have had almost 30 weather days, actually 28 weather days, so almost 90 days. I do know that during the Kenwood project, during the Lake Francis project, and the other Kenwood project between Carl and Holly, those were big projects for our staff. There's no question about it. I thought they did an excellent job, but it's more than just moving dirt, laying down base, and putting down asphalt. We had to put stormwater pipe in the ground. We had to relocate utilities that we didn't own. We had to wait on those utilities. But the issue of private versus public, and I agree with you that maybe if we started looking at the cost of the equipment and that piece of that cost rather than just the man hours, that the numbers might change. Whether or not they'll change dramatically, I don't know, but we'll be happy to look at it. But the question to this board is really, if you wanted to accelerate street projects, how do we finance that acceleration? How do we fund that acceleration? And that's at least what we interpreted that objective. That's how we interpreted it, and that's what we're bringing back to the board for that conversation. Thank you.
I'm excited that we are looking at this, and I understand what Brad is saying, and I agree with a lot of what he has said. But I think what we're here for is to say, how do we want to proceed with the funding? The way I understand it, if we do bonding, we have to specify what streets are going to be done with that bond. And sometimes things change. So I'm not sure if we want to keep ourselves in that position where we can't make a right turn versus a left turn if a priority comes up. This is a lot of money. And I don't think I can make that decision in 30 minutes, right here. I'm all for not paying any interest. I think we all want to save money. As I look at this, I would like to be able to borrow from the utilities, but if that means we can't do anything other than, what did you say, 1.3? What did you say we would have left for streets? 300,000?
300,000 for the construction period of the 6 years, for 6 years. And that would just leave money for crack seal, fog sealing, small projects. And potentially, I think Dennis said they could probably do an overlay with that amount of money.
Or some of the streets that we're doing right now with potholes and different things would be part of the streets that we're going to renew, I would imagine. It's difficult. It's very difficult. And I know our citizens are looking to us because I think this is one of their main concerns is our infrastructure and our streets. That's what I hear the most of. And that's what I see, driving around town, looking at our city and observing what I think we need to do. The roads are not the best. So right now, as I look at this, and this is just a quick, I like borrowing from utilities versus the bonding. And asking for the split, that's in addition to paying out of the utilities, right? Because that's gonna come up in 2023 when we have to make a decision.
Yes, in 2020, well, before we have to do the vote sometime before, October 2023.
Right, I mean, we've got to make some decisions and different things like that. But I really appreciate everything that you've done and how you've set it out and given us all this to look at and make a decision.
May I interject one thing? And I should have said this earlier, and I apologize, I didn't. This is it was a very difficult attempt to try to put this information together. I created about a 50-slide presentation, and it got so deep into the weeds, Christina looked at me and said, "You can't even follow it," which I couldn't. So Christina came back with a much more 30,000-foot view of this issue. So we're not asking any decisions, obviously, tonight, but if the board feels like they would like more info, if you're more interested in one option of funding than another, we will go back to get and dive into the depths of the financing and the process of what the actual cost would be and how to make that work and have further discussions with the board. So I don't want you to, as a board, we're asking you to make a decision tonight on which one of these, but it's clearly a 30,000-foot view of options. And if you choose, if you're feeling like one option is better than the other, let us know, and we'll then get into the nuts and bolts of that option. Sorry.
That's why I said it's difficult to make
Yes.
that decision, but I appreciate all the information. I can't imagine how time-consuming, how difficult it is to bring this all together in a comprehensible manner, and you have done that, and I appreciate that.
David.
Madam Mayor, thank you, Christina, for doing this. I would still be interested in seeing the 50-slide presentation. It might actually give us even more help in trying to make a decision. I am, for one of 7 votes, I am not in favor of adding more fees to our customers' utility bills, just because I think we already do enough of that as it is. I think you said 7 million, right? It almost sounded like you said it'd save 70 million. You said 7 million.
7
right?
million.
Okay. I think what Carol said is the best thing, but I go back to that we're just now getting to the nitty-gritty of saying the public doesn't like that we've not spent enough money, and we have to get back to the purpose of any city government is to take care of the necessities and not be doing so many projects that don't add to the quality of life of every person in the city. And I think we have to prioritize the list as to what does the best. I'm curious, we've got 19 million in unrestricted cash. Why would we not tap into some of our cash? I mean, the first 5 projects here total 9.7 million. And I'm not saying that that's what you want to do, but I think borrowing from utilities is a much better option. Frankly, I will tell you, when I heard years ago that we had bought all of this equipment to do our own streets, I was dumbfounded, because this very subject had been researched thoroughly long ago as to how this could be done if we did it in-house and how it could pay for itself. And it's almost impossible to pay for itself when you have one crew But as you were saying, Christina, this would be commercial, right? You'd be going to commercial companies to do this list.
That
Yeah.
list and those prices are all based on going to a commercial
Right,
company.
right,
That doesn't
yeah.
mean we would have to do it that way,
Right.
but
But what we learned years ago is that you're not stuck with one city crew doing one street at a time. And as Brad was explaining, it is different, public versus private. And if you want to do 3 streets at once, you hire out 3 different companies at once. And there's a lot of companies that are, I mean, there's even more companies today than there were 5 years ago because of the huge growth in Northwest Arkansas. So there's a lot of opportunity to look at different options, and I appreciate you giving it to us, but I think there's always even other ideas that we haven't considered. And that's why I say, Philip, I think your additional slides might even help us brainstorm even more. Even though you couldn't follow it, maybe if we had it, we could spend, each of us individually on our own, look at it, and maybe, I don't know, think of some other ideas. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Christine, thank you, as everyone has said so far. Thank you for putting this together. I'm still not understanding quite how much, if we go with this recommendation with borrowing from utilities. You mentioned something about, let's see, how much would we have in the first 6 years, or something about 6 years? How much would we have in each of the first 6 years to put towards streets if we did the recommendation to borrow from utilities? That's just the $300K, or?
no. The $300,000 is what would be set aside and allocated for filling potholes and fog sealing and
Okay.
that type of thing.
Okay.
We would actually take the 1.3 million for projects plus what we are able to borrow from utilities and stay within our financial policy. So, for example, in the first year you might do 3 projects, and then you might do 2 projects, and then when
Okay.
you get to the project that's $6 million, maybe you only do 1 project that year,
Gotcha. Okay.
kind of thing.
I
But
was
but they
having a
would
hard time
all be
understanding
done within 7 years.
Okay, so this plan would get all those projects or similar projects to the ones that you listed done
Mhm.
within 7 years.
Correct.
Okay. And my only concern with adding a fee at this point is, well, for example, it looks like we're going to get a report tonight about what it's going to cost us to cover the winter storm extra expenses, and so I just want to be careful about adding too many fees onto what people are already paying. So that would be my concern there.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Marla.
thank you. Christina,
Mhm.
good presentation. You gave us some options that we need to be looking at. I do like what Burns and Allen have said. No pun, please. Sorry. The
Company?
It went right over my head for a minute,
I-
but now I get it.
Gracie and
Gotta be a little
George Burns and Gracie Allen. Yeah. Good one, Marla.
So, the stormwater fee, I hate to see the public pay for that, because the stormwater is coming from drainage from subdivisions and the likes and what it causes.
I will make one little caveat, and I don't know how good the city has been about this in the past, but it must impact a city street for the money to be able to come out of streets. Otherwise, we can't fund it out of street money.
That's good. But what I'm trying to allude to is that the stormwater drainage problem is caused by the subdivisions not doing what they need to do.
Correct.
We need to be proactive in making sure that the drainage is there, and that the builder or the company that is putting in the housing and stuff make sure that that drainage ditch between those 2 houses is there, included in our plans for our sites and stuff. I think that would be something we could do instead of putting it back on the citizens, because, it's not their fault.
If I may, I mean, I agree with you that new subdivisions, they have a stormwater requirement.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the work that we're doing in stormwater is going back to subdivisions that, could be 20 years old. So I don't think we've been doing stormwater work, minus, at least in my tenure, on newer subdivisions. But it is, we're doing everything we can on the regulatory side of new subdivisions to get them, and we're going to have another workshop in the near future to talk about detention basins and what the stormwater requirements are, and to make sure that you understand those. But as Christina said, the idea, and as Director Hunt and Director Allen alluded to, the original idea from almost a year ago, before or in the middle of COVID, when we had some heavy rains, and the board had just adopted this goal, was trying to think, how do we shift money around? And as Christina alluded to, the street funding, there is money that's used out of street funding to address stormwater related issues that are impacting streets, or where drainage from streets may be impacting neighborhoods. So the idea was, if we could free up some of that money, that would help, pay any bonding or any borrowing. But it doesn't have to be that way. It was just an idea. So I think potentially a year ago, the timing might have been right. As Director Hunt alluded to, you're going to hear a report from me later tonight about GRDA and the extraordinary energy cost from the February winter storm, and how we're expected to pay for that. And that may cause this issue of a stormwater fee to be put to rest for the time being. So thank you.
Thanks. And I just wanted to add in that I like borrowing from the utilities. I still see that as citizen money, and we need to be doing other than just holding it and drawing interest off it. We need to be using it. And I agree with Director Burns about we've got that equipment. If we don't have the time, the means, the crew to keep it running like it needs to be, we need to look at some other possibilities. I think our street crew does great, but what the public sees is the time factor. And when you use the word accelerate, it's more of a, how can I get this done in 6 months instead of a year, and not accelerate with funding. So I don't know if we've confused things or made things seem a little like we're looking at one and we're really meaning the other. But accelerate to me means to speed up. And in my view, if I was watching someone working, to speed them up was to get that job done quicker. It's not where I'm going to get the money to do that job quicker, but how am I going to get that job done quicker? So,
Madam Mayor, I have to say, I don't like adding additional costs to utilities, but last year, even with COVID, I had multiple subdivisions call me on drainage issues, and Philip every time went out there, and the whole subdivision would come out and meet us. Lots of people, not just one or two, lots of people would come out. And every time Philip said, what would you think of $1 a month to help fix these issues? When you're sitting there and your house is flooded, $1 a month is not much at all, because it's affecting them. And these are old drainage issues that have been carried on and ignored for so long that these people are frustrated. But Philip every time asked them, what do you think of this? And every time, every single one of them said, we love the idea. We want this fixed. We want this flooding to stop. And so I am not for increasing utility bills, but I am for helping the citizens that are every day, every time it floods, facing these flood issues and feeling like the city doesn't care. And the city does care. The directors care. As far as the funding, I do like borrowing, but I am with Brad and Marla and David. The biggest complaint I get, and I care about our street department. I worked with some of those individuals years ago. I appreciate everything they do, but the perception of the people that we serve matters, and they feel like they see projects take way longer than they should. And I think Brad put it clearly. When you have a contractor, they'll work weekends, they'll work nights, they'll do whatever they have to do to get the job done. And we're in a situation that the citizens are frustrated. They're frustrated when you drive down a street and you're just shaking, and you're not on a country county road, you're in the city limits. And so I agree with Brad's comments. And even though I still love and appreciate everybody in the street department, I do feel like if you're asking us, should we do this money, you got to also ask us who we're going to spend it with. And I think contracting is the solution.
Madam Mayor,
Brad.
just so I'd be clear, you shouldn't agree with me very much because the city administrator redirected most of my comments back to the budget. I get it, Philip. But I do think restructuring internally in the street department is part of the equation, the numerical equation. And that's just my observation. I think that's the takeaway from that one. I will say from a drainage standpoint, this last rain that we had, that was fairly significant. Luckily, the ground was dry. If it had been saturated, it obviously would have been much more. But a great example of what the city administrator was talking about is if you go back, I don't want to say how many years. I haven't been on the board that long, but 3 or 4 years, Country Club, Crime Development out by Webb Will, all that development out there. He was putting in the apartments, the folks downstream, all that out there. I went out there and followed the rain out, had a beautiful double rainbow, just me and my dog. The houses don't have roofs yet, so let's just be clear on that one. But the drainage there was significantly, to our neighbors downstream, was significantly reduced. The only problem I ran into is Tahlequah over the railroad track by the old Lazy Boy with the expansion of the storage facility. We got a little puddle there. It's going to hydroplane. Fire department's going to go out. PD's going to be there. You'll get a job there one day. That's an issue, and that's a new one. We have old issues. East Central Street in Washington, one of the lowest places in town. We have a sewage problem when it rains, and we have old drain pipes that are full of dirt, and that's the lowest part of town, and that's a continuous problem, and we close that street on a regular basis. But new development, I think we're on the right pathway on that one there. But I don't want to get confused with that, deconstructing and going away with the street department. Just as a former city employee, having worked for 3 different fire chiefs, 3 different city administrators, we were always restructuring. The fire department, as an example, is always an ever-changing. I'm thankful they don't do it the way that we used to do it, because then you end up with a guy like me. So we can't take away from the PDFD, and I know the FD they should be bringing us a big ticket item at sometime in the near future for number 1, public safety, and for the officer safety. They have a heck of a time with recruitment and retention right now. So we can't rob from them. And if it's the utilities, I'm with that. And it is painful to throw even a $1 tax on some people. And $1 doesn't seem like much, but Director Risler is 100% correct. For every person that's going to be 1,000% on that, we're going to get a couple over here that don't want that tax. The question is, as a board, are we going to be able to go, here's the reason we're doing that, and there's a drop-dead date on that. So if you're going to do it, you have to put a drop-dead date, and you have to put those out, and we have to be really specific on that one, because we got to get buy-in from the other community members. I'll use Ward 2. We've got a little higher ground. We've addressed most of our major issues that the other wards are still dealing with, but we're going to get that flack. So anytime we throw that extra tax, we're going to get that flack, and collectively as a board, are we going to be able to support it? And that's the key, even though it's a simple dollar, but a dollar is a dollar. And that is the way it is. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Christina, I would like to see us look further into the utilities for the funding. I like the freedom to have change that it provides. And concerning the stormwater fee, yeah, I know it's $1, but to have something like that where its sole purpose is to help with the stormwater or the damage that it can do, I would be for that. And I would agree with Director Ressler on that. For those who have experienced it, that dollar would be well spent. I know that right now with our drainage, we have it to where we set up on a yearly maintenance on that. Maybe not physical maintenance, but we go look at it and see what needs to be done. And we stay upon that, and also we have those dollars that are there specifically for that. I think we'll see our drainage improve dramatically. Plus, I think with $1 per home, what have you, that's an equitable split. We're not making any one person or sector do something more than another. My one question I would have is on part number 2, where we do have the split with the police department and fire department. I like where we're going with the police department and fire department, but if we cut them back to 75%, I just want to make sure that we're not cutting our toe off or our foot off to make something else look better. And I'm not implying that, but I would like to make sure we look into that and make sure that the police department and fire department are taken care of properly as to where they can protect our future the way that they need to. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I didn't get an opportunity to give my opinion on the stormwater fee, and I do believe I am for that $1 a month. During my time, I have seen a lot of drainage problems taken care of by the city. One of the major ones when I first came on the board was on Kenwood behind where the Walmart is now. And there's a Dogwood, is it Dogwood? Prospect. I remember walking knee-high in water through some of those homes. And we have taken care of that through some of our new drainage requirements when we go through the Planning Commission. But those people, I do believe, would have been willing to pay $1 a month to get that taken care of. And I do believe Director Rissler is correct. I've been through that personally, not here, but in other communities, and I would have paid $1 a month to save what happened to my home. So I am in favor of that, and I know right now $1 a month doesn't sound a lot to a lot of us, but for some it is a lot. But I am in favor of that. But I also do think the city has moved forward in providing a better drainage program for our community. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify on my comment about the stormwater fee. As Director Burns suggested, I think people that have been impacted by the flooding are not going to have any problem paying $1. It's those that have been affected that may have more of an issue with it. But whether or not we do the stormwater fee or not is not as big of a concern to me as the timing of it. That's what I was suggesting before. If we're going to have to increase utilities to pay for the winter storm damage, or if the utility, the rate study that we did comes back with increases somewhere, it didn't look like it initially, but it's just the timing of it. That's my only concern. So not opposed to the fee. I think most would be okay paying it, even if the flooding doesn't impact them. But I think the timing is something to take into consideration.
Thank you, Board, for your input.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, David.
I was going to ask Philip, the slide proposal with the proposed street projects, you had said this is just the proposal. Is there a list of ones that are not on here that are like in the next 2 to 3 years that are already like in the works or something?
Oh, the board adopted a street maintenance plan in 2018. It's intended to be updated every 3 years. We were intended to update it last year, but other things came up. Steve's working on it today, and we'll be bringing it before the board before the end of the year. So that's a 3-year vision. So yes, we are working. So projects such as Villa View, projects such as the realignment of the curve in Lake Francis are not on this list because we are assuming that those would be projects that would, whether it's done by a private contractor or by city staff, but those would be projects that we would be doing before we get to some major bonding or funding of these projects. So yes, there's a list. I don't have the full list. Steve can give that to me that he's working on, but we'll, if you remember that maintenance street plan, it sort of said, okay, this is the projects for, in the beginning, it was projects for 2018, 2019, and 2020, and now we're into 2021 and finishing some of those projects up. But the idea was to identify streets that are in their worst shape and how do we repair them, because we all know we have street needs. I mean, historically the city built streets without curb and gutter, and a lot of times when you do that, streets have a greater tendency to not hold up well because the water gets underneath the street, the edges of the street break away. Because of that no curb and gutter, we also have some drainage problems. So in my humble opinion, we're playing catch up. This city is playing catch up, and we have street issues that we're trying to repair. We're going to be playing catch up for a number of years as it relates to streets. We're going to be playing catch up in some drainage issues for a number of years, and it's no fault to our own. It's just where we find ourselves. So the idea again that I appreciate Director Burns. We'll be happy to take a look at it. The idea of creating the stormwater fee, which I will tell you a lot of cities are doing. They're creating their own stormwater utility. More rules and regulations are coming down from the federal government every year as it relates to stormwater quality, and that puts more requirements on the city, more unfunded mandates for the city. And part of my 50 slides were a sampling of what other cities are doing and what they're charging for stormwater fees. That coupled with the issue of trying to maybe modify the split of the 1 cent sales tax, we don't want to take any money away from PD or FD that is going to put them in a negative light. By taking that 25%, moving that 5% of that 1 cent sales tax from PD and fire back over to streets. Currently, streets are estimated sales tax funding for 2021 at $850,000. We're ahead of that already. By taking that 5% out, if you do it out of, or 25% total, out of the 850, it moves them back down to about 600,000, maybe 625,000, which are 2017, 2018 levels. So that's how fast we've grown from that. So if you are to ask the public to do something like that, whether it's an extension for 10 years or making it permanent, that fund is only going to grow. And that's something that we debated, whether it's 5%, we might look at 2.5%. But it was just an option of, again, trying to find a way to fund more monies into streets. And Director Burns, your comment about restructuring streets might be a way to find more money for streets, so I appreciate that. But we'll look at that. We'll come back with some ideas and dive a little deeper into this issue. Pull out maybe not all 50 of my slides, Director Allen, but maybe some of those slides to get a little bit deeper in that. But from what I hear, at least, is generally speaking, the board has interest in potentially borrowing from the utilities. And Director Sappington, accelerating the streets wasn't so much accelerating the length of the project, but accelerating projects in general. So look, we'll dive into more I will dive into a more detailed look at what it would be if we borrowed from the utilities and what that split might be. And we'll also, the new piece of this, look at, is there money savings, or is there more cost-effective ways if we were to do some restructuring with the street department, adding the cost of the equipment into the cost of that, and maybe doing something else to free up some money. And I think that's, at least on my list, of generally what I heard, and if I missed something, by all means, please tell me.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to reclaim my time.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I just had some other things I was gonna mention. I think someone brought up that, I'm sure we'll be presented with something on increasing rates for utilities, and this is why I'm against the stormwater fee. I just think we keep going back to the well of the public paying for everything, and some of the streets on this proposed list that we have here, I question. Like, one of them's outside the city limits. Brashears is number 13. It's not even inside the city limits. I look at number 2, Country Club. The majority of people using that are going outside the city limits. So I see number 7, Sager Creek, Hyco to Lincoln. That's the kind of street, to me, we should be concentrating more, because there are a ton of streets in the city just like that street. It's an old concrete street. It's in the middle of town. It serves a ton of residents. That's what we should be actually replacing, because there are a lot of streets in this town that are completely undrivable. It's like an obstacle course driving around each pothole. And I know Airport Road is not something that gets used a lot. We have filled some potholes there, but I think, Philip, if you get a chance, it doesn't look good. It's really, and it's past the majority of where people turn to go, the residents, but it's still a lot of work that needs done on it. I question this list, like the Main Street Bridge. Is that something that definitely is going to have to be replaced? Okay, that was number 4, so I just had that question. But like Highway 16, Kenwood to 412, is that something that we would be able to get money for the from the state because it's Highway 16? It's a highway? Okay. I think especially after many people that showed up at the last meeting, we need to look at Don Hill and Oak Crest, definitely moving up the priority list. But I think we need to really do a crash course, each of us as board members, to look at streets that completely need uprooted, redone from the foundation up. And a prime example is that Sager Creek. It's pitiful. And so that's what I look forward to us being able to do, and not redoing streets that are still pretty good at being able to be driven.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Christina, anything you have? You're good with all of the
I'm
feedback?
good.
Perfect.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very much.
Christina.
I do want to make one quick comment, just for the board's information. Justin and I attended a meeting at the IRWP. They talked about regional drainage issues and about detention ponds, and some of the information that they brought to us really opened my eyes about drainage issues, why we have them, why the old detention ponds, whenever they were made, they worked then, but they don't work now, and there's a reason they don't. There are some things that have changed. So I just want to let you all know that we did attend that. I think Justin is putting something together whenever you all have your workshop very soon on that. I think you're going to really get some good information to help you in making these decisions, especially about the stormwater. So thank you all, and thank you, Christina. Philip, anything else? This workshop is adjourned.
No, that's what I was gonna say. I bet you wanna speak up.
I
What do you
just,
say?
Call to order this regular Siloam Springs Board of Directors meeting for July 20th, 2021. Roll call.
Sappington,
Here.
Smiley,
Here.
Burns,
Here,
Hunt,
Here.
Chrysler,
Here.
Allen,
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
If you all will, please stand with me as Marla Sappington, Director Marla Sappington, leads us in a word of prayer and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our heavenly and most gracious Father, I thank you for the board members here tonight. I thank you for their love of Siloam Springs, and I thank you for their attentiveness to the things that needs to be done to keep Siloam one of the greatest places to live. I pray for our fire and police workers. I pray for the other city staff that puts their jobs, what they do on their jobs is just putting sometimes their lives at risk, and I just pray that you watch over them. I pray that the decisions that are brought before us tonight, that we listen and weigh those concerns as we make our decisions. And I just pray that each of us will be blessed through the service that we are doing to our community. And I just pray that in your holy name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask that anyone that has an electronic device would silence that, please. And thank you. First item is public input. The public may address the Board of Directors regarding any item that is on the consent agenda or any city business not listed on the board's regular agenda. Is there anyone here that would like to address the board? There is not. We will continue on. The next is our consent agenda. Item A, regular meeting minutes of July 6th, 2021. Item B, dedication of utility easements 402 and 406 West Tahlequah Street and 410 North Maple Street. Item C, dedication of utility easements 20521 Keck Road. Dedication of utility easements 3040 and 3100 South Lincoln Street. That was item D. Item E, dedication of utility easements 921 and 923 South Mount Olive. Item F, budget amendment, Community Development Department, Library Division, American Rescue Plan Act for grant acceptance. Item G, authorize hangar sale and lease transfer, Community Development Department, Airport Division, Niley M. Church Hangar. That is our consent agenda. Directors, are there any comments, questions? Or do
Madam
Yes.
Mayor, could we pull item G, please?
Yes, sir. Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to approve our consent agenda as presented with item G removed?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Chrysler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Director Burns, item G.
Madam Mayor, I just
Yes.
wanted to give a public thank you for those that are taking responsibility in purchasing that new hangar. It was a road that had a lot of potential, and we were really excited when it was built and things happened. And it's one of our nicest hangars coming in. I'm just glad to see it occupied and continued growth at the airport, and I just wanted to make that public. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to approve item G to authorize the hangar sale and lease transfer?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Director Hunt and Director Allen. Roll call.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Bristler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next is our regularly scheduled items under ordinances. Item H, Ordinance 21-14, the second reading for annexation of 37.44 acres, the 15,000 block of Arkansas 59. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the board. I'm Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. Before you is the second reading for the annexation at the 15,000 block of Highway 59. On this request, the applicant is seeking to annex and zone the 37.44 acres to C2, which matches the property to the south as well as the future land use map. Staff has not received any additional comments on this in the last reading, and we stand ready for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on Ordinance 2114? There is none. Directors, do you have comments or questions? There being none, do I have a motion to place Ordinance 2114 on its second reading? Suspending the rules and reading title only.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we place ordinance number, is it 2114, on its second reading, suspending the rules and reading by title only.
We have a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Hunt,
Yes.
Bristler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 21-14, an ordinance accepting the annexation of certain territory described in the 1500 block of Arkansas 59 Highway to the city of Siloam Springs, Arkansas, and assigning the same to a ward.
Thank you. Next is item I, Ordinance 21-15. This will be the first and only reading. This is authorizing sole source purchase of ADA fishing pier and adaptive kayak launch. BoardSafe Docks Division of Northeast Products and Services for $123,000. Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as the board, you're aware, back in June, we brought this idea about an ADA fishing pier along with an adaptive kayak launch to the board. Based at that time on preliminary design, the costs were around $85,000 for the material. Based on the direction we got from the board, we met with the contractor on site. We talked about the location of the ADA fishing pier, where it would be placed best, and how to get it situated so that it didn't impact the small boat ramp that's there. So one of the things we did was flip it so that the kayak portion of the fishing pier was next to the existing boat ramp. But the other thing we decided that was in the best interest if we were going to do this was to extend the gangways from 20 feet to 40 feet. And in order to do that, the gangways had to increase in their structural stability and increase in size. So that increased the cost to $123,000 for material, construction, shipping, and installation. In the last week, I've been working with the contractor, BoardSafe, and assuming that this would be approved, and drafted out using the city standard construction contract, using that template, forwarded that to the contractor. And one of the issues with that standard construction contract for projects over $50,000 is a requirement for a performance and payment bond to ensure that they pay any subcontractors and that there's a bond to cover in case they did not. Now, in this case, chances are the only subcontractor is potentially the shipping company, but that added about $3,600 and $3,690 to their overall price if they are required to have that bond. So that price then went up from $123 to $126,690. Back at the June meeting, we had a discussion about whether or not you as a board wanted to push this to a 2022 project or possibly make it a 2021 project and amend the budget. You asked me to see if there were grants or donations that we could get to offset some of that cost. The grants are potentially out there, but the timing, as stated in June, the timing is not such that we could make this a 2021 project. My staff report indicated that we had received donation commitments from 16 local businesses and Civics Club. Today I received an additional one from a 17th club. So the money is collected, or at least committed to the project for private donations is $47,750. There are additional clubs and entities that are out there that have not indicated yes or no, but have indicated that they're still interested, but they have some issues they have to work through, so there may be some additional money coming in next month. The issue in the last time we presented this to the board, there was a discussion about the roof. There is an additional cost if you wish to add a roof, $31,150 plus tax. We talked to the contractor. In just doing a pier, they would maybe argue that a roof is fine. Doing a fishing pier for ADA individuals, they suggested that it might be more difficult for someone who has extremely limited mobility in a wheelchair to be able to cast with a roof over the head, and plus you have to have more vertical struts. So you have to have the struts that come up like studs in a wall that come all the way up to hold the roof. There would be 3 or 4 of those on the wide point. And then because of the rain, you would also want to have an eave. I think the design that you have in there is maybe a 12-inch eave, which may also present problems for someone with certain disabilities from casting out. So they did not recommend a roof, but that's an option if you wish to include that for an additional fee. The attached ordinance waives the requirements for competitive bidding. As I told you previously, there are other kayak launches out there, but this is the only one I found that I believe to be a truly ADA adaptive kayak launch. There are other launches out there that I don't believe were designed specifically for persons in wheelchairs and persons with limited mobility. The ones I've seen look like it's just to help people get into a kayak rather than trying to get into a kayak while it's floating in the water. So for that reason, I believe that sourcing this ADA fishing pier and ADA kayak launch is an exceptional situation whereby the requirements of competitive bidding are not feasible or recommended. The fiscal impact to this, again, $123,000 plus the $3690 for the performance bond, plus an estimated in the packet. I estimated local and state sales tax, assuming we have to pay all of that locally, another $11,685. The one thing I haven't talked about is the additional cost that would be outside of the contractor's contract, which is the bulkheads, the ADA pathway, and the parking. Staff estimated at a contractor price that's about $18,000. I've rounded that up to $20 just to give it a little bit of contingency there. We would try to do that in-house. It's a small enough project. I think we could, but it's a question of timing. Do I take away city staff from an existing project like Kenwood, or we're soon to be over there in Brentwood working on that drainage project, and I don't want to take that away if it's going to slow those projects down. Assuming all of those costs without the roof are correct, that brings it up to $158,375 minus the almost 30% of donated funds, which I hope ultimately end up in excess, at least in $50,000 or in excess of $50,000. Should you wish to install the roof, that's another $31,000 plus $31,150 plus almost $3,000 in sales tax. That is staff's report. We are excited about the project. As I told you, I did visit a site in Shawnee, Oklahoma that they didn't have the fishing pier side, but they did have the kayak launch. I jumped around and you know, pounded on the metal framing, and it's a very sturdy and project, and I think it would last for a long time at City Lake. You've noticed in your packet, I've given you the quote directly from the company, and they've included a drawing of how we flip that so that the kayak piece is on the left side instead of the right originally. Also shows you a drawing of what it would look like with the roof. I've shown you a drawing of roughly to scale. It's not 100% to scale, but the difference between the size of and the extension of a 20-foot versus a 40-foot gangway. A 20-foot just doesn't put it out there very far, and to get to better fishing, it needs to be longer. And I think the last image is what we would propose to do with the ADA pathways and parking. So the idea would be 4 ADA paved parking spaces. In between the two farthest ones on the left and the right would be the ADA access that, you know, that van accessible spaces have to have, and then an ADA pathway to each gangway and an ADA pathway connecting the two pathways. So if you parked on the left but you wanted to go to the fishing pier, you would have ADA access to get there. There's some debate internally about concrete versus asphalt based on flooding issues, but it's not like it's a flowing river out there when it does flood, but that is a concern, and we're still, the $20,000 estimate or the $18,000 estimate is based on concrete, which is more expensive than asphalt. So we're still working on that piece. The ordinance waives the requirement for competitive bidding and authorizes me to enter into a contract with the company for the project, and would also ultimately amend the budget for that $158,000 or whatever that final number is, depending on the roof, and authorize enough funds to pay the contractor and also potentially hire a contractor to do the parking and the bulkheads and the pathways. And staff is more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment on Ordinance 21-15? There is not. Directors?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, David.
Philip, I don't know if you addressed it to us or not, but was there a reason why it was flipped from left to right?
Yes, when we were out there originally, the kayak launch was on the right side, and as we're standing there looking at it, thinking about the conflicts that we're going to create. I mean, if you think about the kayak park today, we have kayakers, we have swimmers, and we have fishermen, fishing persons. And so if we put the fishing pier closer to the boat launch, I'm likely, or somebody's likely, to be throwing their lures close to that, and now I've got somebody trying to get in and out of the boat launch. So putting the kayak launch next to the boat launch made more sense, because the better fishing is actually closer to some degree that pier.
Because the boat launch is right.
That little V kind of in the bank, yes, sir.
I just wondered about the reasoning, just because there are trees on this right, and I just didn't know if people would be casting into those trees from the right side, but it makes perfect sense what you came up with. In terms of the expense for the pathways and the parking spaces, I wouldn't want you to take away a crew from something that's going on now. I think you can pull them off when you get the whole thing in. Once you see, I mean, you may have to make some change later after it's installed, that I think you could probably pull the crew off whenever they have a break or something in between projects or something. So
I appreciate that.
The only reason I say that, it's not gonna prevent people from going ahead and parking just because we don't have I mean, they can still go out there once the thing's there. I know you wouldn't have the ADA parking, but
we wouldn't have ADA access either.
I know.
And so one of the things I saw, and I think I told you, and I think I even showed you a slide of it, of the one in Shawnee, was they built it. They have to have the bulkhead to attach the gangways to. So we have to have that.
And we're in charge of the bulkhead.
We're in charge of the bulkhead.
Okay.
But one of the other things I saw at Shawnee was, it was there, it was an ADA access, but the bulkhead was 2 feet out of the ground. There was no way, I mean, they had it, using the police tape, sort of, the tape, do not enter. They tried to, it wasn't open, it wasn't really, but people were using it. But a handicapped individual, disabled individual who couldn't step up 2 feet tall, couldn't
Right.
use it. So, we can build it, but I've got to have the ability immediately to come behind that and at least
I
put
didn't
in
realize that we would be responsible for the bulkhead.
yes,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bulkheads and the ADA parking and the,
You need
that,
to do
that
all
is
that
our piece.
together at the same time then.
Yes, sir,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the plan.
Okay.
And timing is, I've got to make that timing work.
Sure. Thank you, Philip.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Carol.
I have always been excited about this project, and I think everything is good. And I would go along with the recommendation that we do not put the roof on. I do think it would be difficult for somebody that is handicapped in a wheelchair to, I have a hard enough time casting, so, with a roof. But I think that we don't need to have that roof on there. But I am so excited about this.
What I like is that you said it can be added later. If we have people complaining that are using it all the time, if 3 years down the road we say, this might be something to think about, I like that they're building it to where it can be an addition, so that's nice that we don't have to decide right now. I mean, yes, we're deciding not to do it now, but
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Lisa.
I'm so glad that Bob Holloway brought this project to light, and I know he's the one that was wanting the roof on it, but when I think of some of the limitations that my nephew has, and with his disability, I like the idea of waiting, and then, but I don't want to ignore, if there is a need, I don't want it forgotten or ignored, but I would like to see how individuals with disability feel about it, and not, we're not the ones with the limitations, so we don't know really how it would affect them. And so I do want us to not put the roof on right now, but I do want us to make sure we don't forget to remember to think about those individuals and find out what their need is.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Brad.
this time of the year, I'm a frequent flyer at this facility, and I think we need to just step back. It took 40 years to get where we're at right now. A friendly reminder to city staff is that you have a stewardship plan in your pocket. We're not implementing it. City Lake is a filtration system to Flint, which dumps directly into the Illinois River. And we have a responsibility to keep it clean and to keep it lean. And so this pier is an added, and it adds the traffic, but we don't have the traffic that you think we have out there. And I'm really surprised that we don't have the volume of people, and I hope that brings them out there because it's a hidden jewel. But when I'm out there on the weekends or the evenings, it's not crowded, and there's a lot of water space out there. There's a lot of water space out there, and I'm happy to see this add that ability, and it's also going to add to the folks that on the pier or the finger to the east. Obviously, it's going to add them a better chance of catching more fish, because that dock's going to become kind of an aquatic area, and that'll be a real plus for that. There are people that are enjoying the fingers, and I know we have plans. We need to do some work on that, and we need to remind people the reason some of these areas are overgrown, these riparian zones. We've got milkweed out there that we've had battles with. Fishermen want to rake it down before, but we've got a large diverse group of people that use that facility, and I'm glad we just expanded that diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brad, if I could ask you to pull your mic a little closer to you whenever.
That feels so good. I've been working on being quiet.
Don't.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
Yes, you bet. Anything I can do to help. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, I'd like
Yes.
to make a motion that we approve the ordinance 2115 for its first and only reading reading title only, suspending the rules and reading title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Bristler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Thank you. Philip.
Ordinance number 21-15, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to contract for an American with Disabilities Act fishing pier and adaptive kayak launch at City Lake Park without competitive bidding.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 21-15?
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and lots of seconds. Roll call.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Bristler.
Yes.
Ordinance 21-15 is adopted. Next on our agenda is staff reports. Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You have in your packet the second quarter update of your 2021 and 2022 goals. And if you have any questions as it relates to that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm not going to necessarily go through all of them or go through any of them. You also have the second quarter reports from the Chamber of Commerce, the History Museum, and Main Street. And again, should you have any questions as it relates to that, please feel free to reach out to me and we'll try to get you answers to any and all your questions. As it relates to my administrator's report, I have a number of things to report. On the expenditure side, the electric department purchased almost 8,000 linear feet of 4-inch PVC pipe. Most of that is for inventory and some for general line extensions. That was $48,917.40. And in addition, we also purchased 2,500 tons of Class 7 base. That is subgrade for the Kenwood project. That was $35,075. That would have been, I believe, in the, it's listed as electric department. That probably was in the street department, so I apologize for that. The June sales tax, for the city sales tax for the month, we were up 21.1%. Year to date, we're up just under 15%, 14.9%. On the county sales tax for our collections, we were up 43.8%, and year to date up 22.8%. I was asked not too long ago why that is. I think a lot of that is due to increase in prices in general. Obviously, you know, the cost of lumber and some of that stuff went up, even though maybe we're not as building as much. I did a little research. Retail food and consumable prices are up 8 to 9% compared to 2020. CPI is averaging about 6% currently. So we're all seeing those prices rise. I was looking, if you looked at Fayetteville, Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, everybody's numbers were up around the same percentage. So I think it's really just increased cost of consumables. I would congratulate the police department. They received their reaccreditation from the Arkansas Association of Chiefs of Police, and that's valid through May of 2024. So, Chief, great job on your you and your staff on continuing to receive that accreditation. The Broadband Advisory Committee continues to meet. We are at the point where I think, honestly, based on the committee's comments to me, that this last meeting, that they believe the next step is to conduct a feasibility study. I'm going to meet with them again before the next meeting, but it's likely their fully recommendation is going to be that that a feasibility study is the next step. A feasibility study would include a look at the engineering of what it would take to build the system, what that would cost. It would include a review of the sort of a pro forma as to what you would have to, you know, to be able to operate in the black. And then a review of at least 3 different business models that we've kind of debated about which one is appropriate for Siloam Springs. And then lastly, a citizens survey, and really it would probably be a citizen and a business survey. We had a discussion at the last meeting about the survey, and the board goal of conducting a full-blown citizen survey at some point in the future. Their concern with trying to wrap both a large citizen survey and a broadband survey into that is that it might get watered down, and that if you're serious about doing a broadband, you need to do a broadband survey. So I've been working on reviewing the issues of an RFP versus an RFQ. I'm currently looking at sort of drafting a very draft request for a consultant, and I want to present that and work that through the committee. But likely we will come back to you as a board to say, are you willing to push this and start this project today or this year, or do you want to hold and put that money for a feasibility study in 2022? I clearly don't think it would be appropriate to publish an RFP or an RFQ if we're not going to hire a consultant this year and move forward. I think then we would wait to do that more toward the end of the year once we know that the money's in the budget. But we'll have more discussions about that in the future. The anticipated cost for a feasibility study with a citizen survey or a business survey both is anywhere from $50,000 to probably $65,000. So I'm planting that seed early. Last week, we finally got word from GRDA as to what the cost was, not only to GRDA, but also to the city for the extraordinary energy cost associated to the winter storm in February of this year. As many of you know, there was a struggle on the grid. There was a struggle to get natural gas to burn to create electricity, to provide everybody with electricity. Gas wells froze, prices skyrocketed. GRDA's extraordinary cost was over $102 million. They paid that out of their reserves. We owe 3.77% of that based on the amount of kilowatt hours that were used by the city in February. That's how they based it to all of their customers. Depending on how much energy they use, this is your portion of that total dollar amount. So the number of $3,855,758 is the Siloam Springs portion, 3.77% of that $102 million bill. GRDA is taking it to their board, I believe, next month to formally approve 3 different ways to pay that portion or that money back to GRDA. One is obviously to pay it in full with no carrying cost, pay it over 12 months with no carrying cost, or pay it over 10 years, 120 months with carrying cost, which is not yet determined because they don't know how much they're going to finance and what the actual percentage interest rate would be. I asked Christina to give me an idea at 2.5%, which would be just over $500,000 in carrying cost for us. They're requesting a decision by September so that they can apply for the 10-year low-interest loan or bond it from the state so repayments begin in 2022. I don't have an answer for you today as far as what we would recommend and how best to pay it off. I've given Christina and her staff some directives and asked for a bunch of information about the impacts of maybe trying to pay it off in full, but pay it out of back to the city over a shorter period of time than 10 years to try to eliminate the carrying cost. So I hope in 2 weeks I will come back to you with a proposal. I won't ask you to make a decision then. But likely at the last meeting in August, we will probably have to make a decision. GRDA's view is that if a customer doesn't give them a clear decision as to how they're going to do it, you're going to roll over into the 10-year payment window, and you're going to end up getting additional cost added to you for the carrying cost. So we're working on that. It's an extraordinary dollar amount. There's no question about it. I think there's a way to equitably account for it, and it's a sad thing that we have to pay for it, but I keep reminding myself that we were only without power for about 45 minutes. We survived the storm much better than our counterparts in Texas. Nobody lost their lives, nobody froze to death, and it could have been a lot worse. And it hopefully never happens again. The reason GRDA needs to bond or get a loan to recoup their losses on that is in case it does happen again. Today, if it happened again right now, they wouldn't have the cash reserves to cover that cost. And that's something that they couldn't live with, and we wouldn't want them to live with that because it would hurt all of us. I have a number of issues on COVID update. The reality is, I won't go through them all, you can read them, but the reality is hospitals are filling up with cases. We still have low numbers of individuals, percentages of our state that have been vaccinated. It's not going away. There's the fear that it's coming back. We're seeing numbers in Benton County go up. It is important, I think, for those who have not been vaccinated to seriously consider the vaccinations. The new variant is having its toll on our population. And for that reason, the governor is planning and tentatively has scheduled to speak to the public and hear their concerns about vaccinations on Friday, July the 30th at 11 a.m. here in Siloam Springs at the community building. City staff will be working with his staff to make all the arrangements of that. But as you can see there, based on the data that I provided in front of you, the numbers are going up. I was going to mention the Kenwood rebuild, the 60-day delay based on, and then the 28-day weather delay based on some of the social media comments that I've seen, but we've already talked about that. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but Madam Mayor, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Before I move on to the director's reports, I would like to make a couple of comments. One, to say congratulations to our police department for their accreditation. Job well done. We appreciate what you all do every day, both you and the fire department. We are very, very, very lucky to have the departments that we have and our first responders. We are second to none in this area, so we are very thankful for that. The other is, and I don't say very much about COVID. I have been vaccinated because my husband and I chose to do that. And I know there are a lot of people out there that have chosen not to for various reasons. But I would ask that you take a second look at the information. Make sure that what you are relying on is true information. It's not something that someone's just thrown out there. Make sure it is really the right information that you're listening to. Now that we are starting to see even our doctors get on TV and ask people, please, please consider this. We have children in our ICU units that are too young to get vaccinated, so they can't get the protection. We can. So please consider that and make sure your information is correct, that your decision is based on truth. Thank you. And with that, we will go to our director's reports. Tonight, we'll start with you. Reed, please.
With me, all right. I again would like to say thank you to our city for the work that we do to provide a climate that is livable, enjoyable. That when people come through our community that are from out of town, they see a difference. And it may be a little bit subtle, but it's everlasting, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Carol?
I want to echo what our mayor has said. I just got a text from my son that's a doctor, and he said their ICU is full, and this is over in Rogers. So just talk with your healthcare provider to help you make that decision. I'm not saying you need to do one or the other, but talk to somebody that is knowledgeable in what is going on. I want to thank the police and fire department. I was not able to attend the recognition on Saturday, but I would like to recommend or recognize our first responders. They do such a wonderful job. Our community depends on them, and we appreciate them very much. Tail waggers. I'm always talking about tail waggers, and they
Get
have,
another dog.
they are looking for foster parents for their puppies and their kittens. So if you have it in your heart that you'd like to have an animal, but maybe not full-time, think about fostering. Main Street, the main event is going on now. If you want to get on Facebook, they have an auction going on, and it ends on Friday. At our amphitheater, I think Trout Fishing in America is going to be here on Saturday, and if you have not heard them, you need to, because they are really good, and I am so proud that Siloam is having the opportunity to have them at our amphitheater. And thank you for the presentation on our infrastructure and accelerating our streets. I know that that is a concern of our citizens, and I always get excited when we do something that affects everybody, and I appreciate the work that went into that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. David?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I didn't get the date and time. Philip, what did you say? When is the governor going to be at the community building?
Friday the 30th at 11 o'clock.
Okay. Huh? Pardon? Oh, it was on the backside. Okay. The broadband update, Philip, I appreciate you updating us on everything that's already been accomplished. I think that's amazing. I am glad you're considering an RFP. I think they're much better than an RFQ. I think you get to see more apples to apples of what different companies can provide regarding the survey. You know, broadband has a potential to bring in a great deal of additional new untapped revenue to the city. And I just look forward to whatever they can go and bring back to us. I would request that whatever company we look at, that they actually have open minds to our suggestions, as the company on the comprehensive plan never did put anything in the utility bills. And if you look at the breakdown of the respondents for that online, the older seniors are by far the smallest responding group. And I think that was brought up by several board members as something we'd like to see, and that was never done. In addition, the online survey done by this company was not prevented from someone getting online and voting 100 times. And I hope that we can ask whatever company that you look at, Philip, that they have a firewall type, something that you either have to put in your address or something with a billable number for your electric bill or something to prevent anything like that. I will give you my input on the GRDA thing. I think paying over 12 months is the best, no carrying cost, breaking it over 12 months. That's just my preference. I want to thank you personally for this Pier and the ADA kayak launch. I think it's been a huge, I say, feather in our cap, and I think it will be for many decades to come, that we'll be able to brag about having something that allows disabled to get into kayaks easily and to use, as what Brad said, we have a real gem out there and that does not get used enough. And so I want to thank Bob Holloway for having this idea last summer, summer of 2020, when so many people were needing things to do. And I just think it's great, Philip, how much research you did into it and found such an obvious good company. And I think what sold so many people was that video. And I think that was great that you did that. I appreciate that very much. I had a question. The board goal update thing is dated July 7th. Will we be doing that, an update this year at some point? The report that
So The report is strictly a quarterly updates that I provide to the board. The goals are through 2022. So in
Oh, okay.
2022, we would start meeting, or you would meet to try to develop goals for 2023 and 2024.
So this is not,
It's just a report on the goals that the board adopted. You were not on the board at the time it was adopted, and originally it was adopted in 2020 for 2021 and 2022.
yeah, that's the date I was referencing, is July 7th of 2020.
Yes, that was the date the goals were adopted by the board.
So this is not updated for 2 more years? Or
That's right. The updates only are related to progress on the individual goals. I mean, it's a board decision. You could do
I would
however
think
you
that
wish
the
to
board
do
would
it.
want to update it yearly, just to be able to make changes to different ideas.
Strictly up
Just
to the board.
Just a thought. You commented earlier, Philip, and I thought it was a very good comment. Obviously, during the workshop, you said we are catching up on streets, and we are. It's not been as big a priority as it needs to be. That is, in my opinion, what I hear, it is one of the public's biggest pet peeves is how we have let a lot of streets go, and I look forward to us looking at more. They don't have to be big, long streets to completely be redone because of how bad they've gotten. But I think we all, as a board, we are the financial stewards for the taxpayer money, and we all need to do a good job of keeping the expenditures towards better street projects and getting them done sooner and more often. And so I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Mindy?
Okay. I echo a lot of the comments that have already been made about the plans for the street department, or plans for the street improvements. Thank you to both Christina and Philip for your work on coming up with a plan, and I'm sure there are others involved in coming up with that plan as well. It does seem that, especially on social media and other times when people have an opportunity to express opinions, often when they express concerns about Siloam, it does have to do with the streets and the need for improvement. So I'm glad we're focusing on making some improvements. I know that list you gave us is not exactly the priority that may be implemented, but it's a great start, and I appreciate that. Thank you also to the Broadband Committee, and for the work they've done so far. Look forward to hearing more about that. I think that is something else that the citizens are interested in. Thank you to the Rotarians and for the service that they gave on Saturday. I was able to attend that. Thank you especially to the first responders who were the reason for the service on Saturday, to just acknowledge the work that you all have done throughout COVID, but also just every day outside of COVID. So thank you for helping us to feel safe here in Siloam. And then I noticed on Siloam's Facebook page today that Siloam Springs was just rated one of 7 small towns in Arkansas that are full of charm and perfect for a weekend escape. So that's good news. I would tend to agree with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Brad?
Well, that entertainment district would come in handy. Oh, sorry, I got sidetracked. I apologize. I digress.
No, we're rated that way without
We
it.
just have a lot of positive stuff going on in this city, and as a board, we have challenges. And tonight's workshop, good open conversation, and they're tough ones, and I look forward to more of them, because that's the reason we're on the board, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose of it. So I'm excited as we dig through these things and figure out how best to serve the community and to accelerate certain programs. I cannot adopt any more animals or babysit, but thank you, Director Smiley. And in the notes, I don't blame you for anything. I'm fully responsible for my rash decisions. I just will make a comment on GRDA about paying it. I'm a big fan on this one of paying the full cost, and I'll explain why. We had an F2 tornado, and financially we got off very well. It impacted a lot of people. their property and psychologically and all those things that those kind of incidents do. And we carry around this cash because we're afraid of that day when something happens. And that day happened. And we could pay ourselves back, or we could just keep chunking away. But that's why we carry that money around, and it happened to us. And it's time to move forward and get back on track of the things we discussed tonight and that are going to come up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. And Marla, before we move on, there's some numbers that Philip's going to share with you all that kind of has to do with your comment about GRDA.
Well, I meant to say this earlier. The 3.8 million is a big number, but I wanted to give you some other cities and what their extraordinary energy costs were. They're not all GRDA customers, but it gives you an idea of how we fit in. So the city of Piggott, Arkansas, way in the northeast corner of the state, they have 2,000 meters. Their bill is $2 million. We have 8,000 meters. Our bill is maybe double that, but not $8 million. Hope Water and Light have 7,000 meters. They're just behind us. Their bill is $5.2 million. Paragould Water and Light has 14,000 meters, and their bill is $8.5 million. So, I mean, they have more meters, not quite double, but their bill is more than double our bill. So, relatively speaking, the 3.8 is not a bad number for what we went through compared to what other cities experienced. And I digressed for not including that in my original report, and I apologize for interrupting the board reports.
Thank you, Philip. Marla?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank the members of our first responders that were recognized, and the ability to go down and lay down in my bed at night and feel safe in my community is really important. And also, if an emergency occurs, I know that they're there for us, and that's very mind soothing, and I just appreciate them. And it's not that they just are there for emergencies and things like that, but they're visual. They are able to be seen in the city, at the parks, at different activities at the schools, and they are a true member of the community and not just someone that hides until the bell rings and they're off to the race. I also appreciate all the numbers tonight. It's like just, it shows that Siloam we're planning for the future because we have the funds, and we can make decisions what to do with those funds. And just like the storm that came through in February, I was able to go home and my heater was on, or my lights were on. I was able to keep my family warm and fed, and that says a lot about the infrastructure of some of our work that we've been trying to update with the electrical lines and stuff. And I know it's a big number, but thank the Lord for us having it and having the ability to make the decision on how to pay that. And with workshop tonight about expenses for streets and which streets, I would just like to see us focus on the streets where we're going to route the future traffic, because right now, and we talked about this in the CPAC meeting, is we struggle around the schools and stuff. At 3 o'clock when school's let out and you've got to go to 3 different schools to pick up your kids, it may take an hour for you to do that at times. And I think that we just need to look at the bigger picture and not just what's going to get us by for now, but if they're going to build a new school, if they're going to build a new fire department in a certain area, that we focus on those arterial areas too. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
I want to say thank you to the Siloam Springs Rotary Club for putting together the recognition for the police, fire, and dispatch. And they said this at the meeting. A lot of times we forget dispatch is a part of that, and they're a big part of it. They're the first ones that receive that call, and so I want to say thank you to police, fire, and dispatch because you do make a difference. Congratulations to the PD. On Brad's comment, Director Burns's comment, I agree. I think we should pay it in full. In my notes here, when Mr. Patterson was going through it, I put, isn't that what our reserves are for? And we had an emergency situation, and now we just need to pay for it and move forward. I am not, and I'm going to say this, I continue saying it, I am not for raising utilities, and I know I said something about the
Stormwater.
yeah, stormwater, sorry. My mind is, sorry, I have to apologize. The stormwater, but I did see the citizens myself. We went to 4 different projects, 4 different areas, and every single person said, I would give $1 a month. And so before we consider that, I hope that we reach out to the citizens in our ward, in our area, and ask them, is this something to get feedback from them? As far as the paying for the streets, did we ever find out if we could take money from the quality of life for streets that lead to those projects? Because it seems like that would be part of the project if we made it part of the project. That would help with some of the funding.
The question that was put to the voters referenced quality of life things like parks, trails, sidewalks, other recreational amenities, I believe, and streets was not included in that. So from a staff perspective and legal perspective from Jay, no, we can't go beyond that. I mean, as long as you could argue it's for one of those things, then yes. But to say it's for streets, when streets really wasn't in that question that went to the voters, it potentially could come back and bite the city.
I just didn't know if the street led to the project, if we can consider it, consume it into the project. Just trying to find ways that we can, because it is a concern for the citizens, and that's the biggest thing I hear in my ward is streets, 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 and I completely understand because when I drive down some of them, it's rough. I want to say thank you.
Your time.
To all the citizens and everybody in the community that reached out to my husband and I. A couple of weeks ago, he had an accident. It's a miracle he's here, if you knew all the details. 4 years ago, I got the same kind of call, but I lost my husband. So this has been very hard, and I do appreciate the community I live in. I had an opportunity when I married John to move to Washington, D.C. And I put my house on the market. And at the last minute, I said, I can't leave my network. I can't leave my support, and this community is my support. Even if I disagree, even if I don't like something you do, I love everybody in this community. I appreciate what everybody gives to this community. And when I am faced with a situation, I really appreciate what this community does for me and my family. And I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Lisa. And our prayers are still with you and your family. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion and do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? There being none, we are adjourned.